What's going on, guys? We're back with another podcast. Me and Robert here, trying to give you some value, and we still don't actually have an official name for
Yeah,
our
we were just trying to
podcast.
think of that. Submissions are welcome. We'll
Yes.
maybe pull the audience.
Last time we called it the Kickback Cast because it kind of had a good ring to it, but it has actually nothing to do with anything related to real estate or business.
But you know that leaves us open, Tom,
Yeah,
for future expansion. You know,
Many
eventually
avenues.
get board of real estate and get into some like gardening or something. We can always podcast about that under the same title.
We'll kick back in the garden. But no, yeah, we'll figure that out. But appreciate you guys for listening to us again, watching us here. We're trying something new with our setup as well, so we're trying to give you quality. So give us some feedback on what you think. But today we want to talk about how to get into real estate. If you're a newbie, like how do you begin? Sometimes it could be daunting. Sometimes you're saying, where do I start? And I don't even know what type of like strategy to even do. So I guess, Rob, maybe what we can do is we can explain how we got in real estate first and then kind of dig in a little bit as to maybe some applicable actions and takeaways for our listeners.
I always forget that a lot of people aren't in real estate, if I can say it that way, because we're always talking to each other and to other people in that circle. I forget that some of the simpler things people just don't interact with. So yeah, it is good. Just start from the beginning and just talk about how we got started, and nothing too flashy, nothing complicated, nothing even new necessarily. Just stepping in. So I know for myself, just starting to do the math. One of my friends in university started telling me about bigger pockets, and just started doing the math and seeing like, wait a second, this actually adds up. So this can't be right. I thought you had to just get paid from a day job, and maybe you cash in on compound interest from stocks when you're 65. So I just figured I'd work till I'm dead or something close to it. But starting to see the math on the Burr method, I thought, just a second. Nothing here is actually that far out there. This is actually doable. Like maybe your margin's not going to be so good, but still doing the math, and I'm thinking, this is a legitimate get-rich-slow scheme. So I started looking into it and looking at the Windsor market specifically, since we live there. And that was around the same time when Samantha and I were dating. So I knew that I'd be buying a house soon, and thought I need to do house hacking, which is also a word I just learned from, I think, Bigger Pockets, actually. Yeah. So I'd love to have my own space, but I knew that if we're going to be married and she's still going to be in school, paying for school, that's too many expenses. So I probably would have been broke living off beans and rice. So
You gotta do what you gotta do.
just told her, we're going to have neighbors in the same house as us. And so she was more wanting to go into an apartment. And I said, you know what? That's okay. You know, maybe we can talk about it. But in my head, I'm saying,
But you're wrong.
we'll get used to it. Yeah, but you're wrong. So we did. And I remember telling somebody when they asked what the plan was, just as far as, you know, moving out, getting married, whatever else. And then I mentioned buying a duplex and moving in. And I remember they kind of laughed and said, yeah, everybody and their brother wants to do that. I just said, yeah, of course. So that's what I'm going to do it.
Right.
And so we did it. We bought a duplex near the university because we figured renting one of the units to students would never be a problem, or others, but there's always demand in that area. And yeah, we just, this one was really simple, really straightforward. It's just put the 20% down and bought a duplex. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy, just as straightforward and as simple as it gets. The most basic deal we've ever done. You just buy it and then live in one half, rent the other. And then even when I was living in it, we broke even.
Just from the rents from the second unit.
Just from the rent, because at that point we were in the middle of COVID when interest rate, I think I had like 1.5%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically free.
And nobody was bidding on it because we bought it 1 month after lockdown. So nobody was bidding on it. Literally nobody. Their agent called us and asked us to bid on it. So we said, okay, you know what? We can work with this.
Yeah, you got it at the perfect time.
But
yeah.
yeah, so that's just how we got started. And then from there, you just, I hear all these people asking questions which are the same. People hesitate because they don't get it. But what they don't get is that there's not actually that much to get. You
Are you saying they have analysis paralysis, or they go to
Yeah,
get
I'd say so.
overwhelmed in the weeds?
No, I think it's analysis paralysis. Somebody has a problem for every solution. You say, "Oh, well, what do you do if you can't trust the tenants?" Well, there's the law for that. Oh, well, what if you can't trust the law? Well, it works. Maybe it doesn't work as well as we'd like, but it still works. And so they say, "Oh, what if you get a problem tenant?" Okay, well, you have a problem tenant. It's like, that's why you vet them. What if you don't vet properly? Okay, well, you still have options. I mean, everything can go wrong. You can put your money under your bed, and then it'll just be eaten by moths and rust and all that. You can put all your money in the stock market, and you can have another Black Thursday. So, yeah,
People find excuses and reasons that it could go wrong.
Yeah,
They don't
so-
ever look at the positives. What if it does go right? What if I do buy this property? What if I do get
Yeah,
the right
yeah,
perfect
exactly.
tenant? What if I do have a perfect renovation?
so
They
it's
never kind of flip the script and go positive.
I like that. Yeah,
Like you still got to trust and verify and have contingency plans. You don't be blindly saying, "Oh, this is going to be
Right.
the best thing ever," because obviously you do have tenant issues sometimes
Yeah.
and things like that. But overall, I think you just need to have a more positive outlook on for some of these people. I'm saying,
No, and that's it. It works. So it's not just a matter of, oh, I wonder if this worked. No, real estate works. It's just like working a day job gets you money. People overthink it because they don't understand it. But what I'm saying is there's not that much to understand. A lot of it, it's like, again, I'm going to say it's just like working a day job where you can have somebody who's really good at it and gets paid $300,000 a year because they've managed to gain the right skills to get amazing jobs. Or you could be working for a job that doesn't pay you that well because you haven't developed the skills or you haven't taken the time to apply to other jobs. I don't know, real estate, if you do it poorly, you're going to lose money. You'll get fired if you do a job poorly. But I don't see the reason to think of them so differently, as one being incredibly risky and some weird thing that isn't for normal people, and the other one as being the default option.
gotcha.
Like I get why it's seen that way. It's just it doesn't need to be such a stark divide.
Where would you say that people should go to first study about real estate or to get their toes wet? Like, where should they start? Because you mentioned Bigger Pockets was a great
Yeah.
podcast. You can listen to us, which is also a great podcast and video series.
Yeah.
But what else did you do to learn before kind of jumping in? Because I know you're actually a bit more analytical than I am.
Well, the YouTube videos, the Spotify podcast, whatever else, those are good and would be one of the first things I do. But talking to somebody who's currently making money off of it is the best way to do it. So when you started running the Windsor meetups, I still had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what questions to ask. I walked in there and just said, like, what's going on? What do you do? And every single thing was new, every single answer.
Yeah.
Even though, looking back, they were all basic questions and answers. Everything was just a process of general osmosis and assimilation. Just because it was different. So I do appreciate, again, how Wealth Genius talks about expanding your mindset. That's really all it was expanding the range of what I considered ordinary. And that in and of itself was a fairly ordinary process. So
I don't know. I like that
Yeah.
answer. The only other thing I'd add was I really liked a couple books. Just same thing with podcasts.
Oh yeah, which
just,
ones did you read?
It was actually Bigger Pockets book. I forget which one it was. It was.
We are not affiliated with Bigger Pockets
No,
in any way.
no.
They are not paying us.
It was, I think, about the Burr method. I think that's what it was.
right.
Just explaining the process that's saying you can basically put money into a project, you can buy the place, you can renovate it, rent it out, and then refinance and basically pull all your money back out. And then maybe even some additional on top of that. And so
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
making money buying a house, and effectively, once you do it, you have a building that's free and clear. And where else are you going to get that? Nowadays in Canada, not really.
Yeah,
But
not
maybe
as much.
back in the day, like you, especially in like the 2016 to 2019, even, you could definitely do it on occasion. By the way, just scoot your mic up a tiny bit just in case.
Pull that sucker up real close.
Slobber on it. No, but yeah, that's a great thing that you said. You got to expand your mind a little bit, and then almost become desensitized because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do see just from people I talk to, people who are successful in their own right, who dismiss real estate, not because they've looked at it and said, it's okay, I don't need it, but because they say, oh, I don't like it. And if they look at it and say, it's not really my thing, perfectly fine. Because stocks aren't really my thing, even though I see them as one of the best ways of conserving and creating wealth. I just haven't really put as much stock into that. But it's great. I just don't do it. And so if you do that, that's fine. If you're not going to real estate for that reason. But I've seen generally the people who say that they're not in it or don't want to be in it, it's because they just don't really feel like looking into it, or they don't want to have a time sink where they have to put all their time into it. And so that one's actually valid too, because when you start out, it makes sense. I mean, we're doing the self-management thing. Yep. So I don't know how much of your time with everything is taken up by real estate.
To self-manage, honestly, if you pick the right tenants and obviously if your buildings are close around you, not spread out way on the other side of the city.
Yeah.
I spend maybe a grand total of like 2 hours a week, 2 hours a month on my rentals.
Yeah.
It's not a whole ton. It's basically just checking the account that the money was received, and the occasional, oh shoot, something was broken, but that's very rare. Or one time it was, the furnace it just feels a little cold, and I just checked the thermostat, and then they just cranked it up. So nothing too serious. So even on some months, it's probably less than that. So I think that is one thing you mentioned. Yeah. Some people think, oh my goodness, I'm going to get calls at 4 a.m. It is inevitable that you will get some, especially the more units you accumulate, the odds of that definitely go up. But I think either way, even if you did get a call on occasion at 4 a.m., it's worth it. Yeah. Because of what reasons? Because I know you were mentioning earlier about the math. Maybe you can explain a bit more of the math on why it makes sense. Because people might not understand kind of the basics of how you make wealth with real estate.
So this is the absolute basic. So if you've ever bought a house before, you're probably going to fall asleep. But it's still so beautiful that I love to hear it out of my own mouth, my own ears, to list the 4 ways you make money off of real estate.
It's the 4 ways to win, I think.
4 ways to win. Yeah. Whoever, maybe you can categorize differently. Whatever. I'm going to list 4. Yep. So you're getting mortgage pay down. So every single time you pay, that is a recoverable cost. Sorry. Every time that your mortgage is paid.
Sure. Just in general.
The principal component is a recoverable cost. Yep. And so it's not lost forever. It's just a forced savings account into your house. That you can do some fancy shenanigans like the refinance and the BRRRR method and all that other sort of stuff.
And stuff. We'll talk about that after too.
And then, so that is the principal pay down. You have passive appreciation. So your house just goes up in value because it's an asset.
How much would you say stuff appreciates nowadays in Windsor, let's
say? What is it, around 5%, 6% right now? That'd be a question for a realtor.
No, that's actually fair.
But
I think
I'm going to guess.
You can even assume 3%, but it's definitely gone up more than that. Even though we've dipped, we're still net positive.
Right. Yeah, the year-over-year average. I think right now it's not quite as much, but still, you look at that, 6%.
That's really good. I would say, along the same lines of the appreciation is the year-long averages. So even if you do have small dips, as long as you hold on to the property, you're set. You're not actually incurring a loss. So it's an asset that can actually, it can weather any storm. You don't have to really worry I guess it's same with stocks too. As long as you don't sell a stock, you don't actually have any realized losses or gains.
It's the same principle,
So just as long as you hold on to it, real estate generally, barring war or some crazy disaster, real estate properties and prices and land go up because populations go up and just general inflation occurs. But sorry, what's the third one?
Where's the third one? Where am I?
We did appreciation and then mortgage pay down.
And then you have forced appreciation. So that comes in when you're doing a BRRRR, where or a flip. You walk in, hit it with a hammer a few times and maybe paint something. And then you say, voila, it's now worth
you improve the property
this much more. So you throw your sweat into it. And so sweat equity, forced appreciation, whatever you want to call it. You redo your kitchen, redo your bathroom, biggest bang for your buck. Everybody talks about that. You just, all of a sudden your house is worth more. And the amount that it goes up is usually a larger number than the number you put in.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to look at the cash on cash return on that, I mean, that's not always the main number you want to look at, but So that's great. And then cash flow. We love cash flow. You just the actual cash you get. So everybody thinks about the money you end up with your bank account afterwards as being the big deal, but it's not even that big of a deal most of the time, depending on what market you're in. But in Windsor, I don't know, like how many people do you know are making huge cash flow in Windsor?
Depends on the business model. If you're doing like Airbnb, you're going to cash flow. But if it's just a standard rental, maybe a couple $100 a unit.
Yeah. And I guess the new
depends
bills
on
we saw were
what
pretty
price you
good.
buy at too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the new bills. Yeah. So it really is depends on the area, I'd say.
Right.
On places, just rule of thumb, if a place has high appreciation, you're probably going to have a little lower cash flow.
Okay.
Because
yeah,
you're
cool.
spending more on the property, and so your mortgage is going to be a bit bigger. You can have more interest and more things to pay.
Right. Okay, that makes sense too with like Cleveland or Ohio having lower appreciation but higher cash flow. That makes sense.
Exactly, because the place with lower appreciation, they have let's do the 1% rule. This is a good teachable moment. So the 1% rule is when you have let's say you have a building, and we're going to use nice round numbers, and it's $100,000. That $100,000 building has a mortgage then of X amount, and if you can get rent that's equal to 1% of the building's purchase price, then that hits the 1% rule. And you know already that if you're getting 1% of the building purchase price, so that means $1,000, that's going to exceed your mortgage payment for sure.
Right.
And that means then you're definitely going to have cash flow.
Right.
And that means you're going to have a good return on your money as well. So places like Cleveland, because the prices are so low, or places generally a lot of places in the States, you're going to find the 1% rule or close to it, and you can make the cash flow play.
Right. When you're getting a duplex for like 120.
Yeah.
Even
exactly.
after conversion.
Even if it's US, it's still
you can't touch that in Canada.
Just to preface, we love Windsor still, but
it's great.
We love both Windsor
just,
and Detroit and Cleveland.
Yeah, you just need to look for the right deal. That's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, what else is new? Yeah.
All right. So
one other thing I want to say is ties in with passive appreciation. Inflation favors the borrower. So unfortunately, inflation is just built into the system with central banks, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. So which is the government's way of stealing from the poor to pay the rich. So that sucks, but I'm going to cash in on it. So the more you borrow now, like just looking, really great, huge wealth transfer, because people who borrow money, live off debt, have huge mortgages, have lines of credit. $1 used to buy you $1, whatever, like a deer skin.
It would buy you a lot.
But in 100 years, $10,000 is going to buy you a Big Mac.
Exactly.
So let's say 30 years from now, your mortgage, it's $500,000. Well, $500,000 is going to be the median salary for the average person in Canada for a year or something like that. So just wanted to point that out.
And I think the point you're trying to make too is that once inflation happens, that debt has actually technically reduced.
Yes.
So it's easier to pay off.
Yeah.
And because you hedged your bets essentially with the property and it's appreciating, you're either matching inflation or exceeding it. So your money actually isn't evaporating.
Yes, because
you're at least maintaining.
Money is not real.
Yeah.
It is imagined. Like, who even knows what it is? I don't even know. But houses are real. So the house has the value of a house. $1 has the value of who knows what. Mm-hmm. And so that is fluctuating, but the house at least you're still going to live in. So yeah, your debt is devalued. So that's a way that is a little harder to quantify, but I would consider that a fifth, or at least tied in with the passive appreciation as far as like an income stream.
Right.
So sorry.
No. Don't be sorry. You're good. I think now that we kind of explained just generally why we like real estate, what are some common pitfalls that we see some newer investors make, or what are some things that they should watch out for when they do their first property?
Oh man.
Maybe I'll start it off.
Come, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes they get shiny object syndrome and they're not patient. Yeah. Like typical stuff, and you might have heard this before, but I think it needs to be said because even I kind of have succumbed to that before, saying, "Oh, this seems like a great deal," and I want to get into it, and then it turns out maybe it was a little bit mediocre, or maybe you rush too fast and you don't get all your ducks in a row with all your quotes, or maybe overlooked something and said, oh, shoot, the basement actually has a foundation issue, or you have extra renovations that you didn't account for in your budget. So if you go a little bit too quickly, you can cause issues. So you want to be patient when you pick your properties and not get emotional about the sale. So even if it's the most beautiful property I've ever seen and you want to get it, but then the price is $20,000 too much, don't spend the extra $20,000.
Right. Oh yeah.
Stick to your max allowable offer, your MOA, just the max amount you can pay.
Max allowable.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Set your criteria. And then if it's outside the criteria, don't massage the numbers to make it work. I know that's something that I've done on the
really easy
spreadsheet.
to do,
Just
yeah.
type a few more in the spreadsheet. Well, if I did that,
so
that actually
close to making it
technically looks really good, but in reality, I'm rounding up for 3 different things. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think I've done a bit of that. Actually, the house I'm living in now was offered to me off market, and I bought it at the peak. If you look at a graph of Essex County real estate prices, I bought it right at that peak, like pretty much right on to the month.
Oh man.
So I probably contributed to that spike. So with that, I could have, looking back to, I could have done a little more for negotiation as well. So I still had no idea what I was doing. So it's all a process.
If you didn't have as much knowledge of what you were doing, would you say it's important to have a power team perhaps?
Yeah, it helps. Yeah, it would help if you're just not just buying something to live in, because at that point that's different. That's actually more of a personal decision. If you're buying something for an investment property, it would definitely help to talk to somebody or have a family member or friend who has done it before, just come to walk-alongs with you. So actually, thankfully, we had some help with that. Some friends from church who have done a lot of fixer-uppers.
Shout out to the Kennys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they came by and helped us pick out our first house.
Right on.
So that was really great. And they pointed out a lot of things that I missed because I still barely knew how to swing a hammer at that point.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty too. If you have people in the right places, you don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So who else? It's the who, not the how, right? So who else would you have on your power team if you're starting out? Or even just general, as an investor, who is on a general power team that you need?
Oh man, as an investor, yeah, because just starting out, I mean, how many people are you going to really be talking to? But if you're looking to buy more and start accumulating, you'll need a good realtor who you can go to and who can actually be responsive and who doesn't mind you bothering them a lot because you actually bring them business.
Right.
But at a certain point, you do need somebody who can be your go-to guy to say, hey, I need comps on this real quick. So you can place an offer that's accurate and actually act quickly.
And preferably to their investors themselves.
Yeah.
Because that really helps. Because not that realtors aren't knowledgeable enough, but sometimes if they're not an investor themselves, they won't know certain things to look out for when you're actually buying too, or maybe they could be a second pair of eyes in case you overlook something, right? And or maybe if they're not investor folks, maybe they're just going to be giving you junk and then wasting your time.
Yeah, and that we've seen that a lot. Somebody says, "Wow, look at this." No, we can't work with that.
Yeah, that's not what we're looking for.
Yeah, not even
buy
close.
box.
So, yeah, sir, I do want to turn it back around. I didn't get to ask you how you ended up getting started.
Oh, yeah. So I guess I got started a little after you. Actually, you beat me to the punch.
Yeah, just barely.
Yeah, I was really proud of you when you actually bought a place.
Hey,
I was
thanks.
like, oh, no
Yeah.
way. And so then I thought to myself too, I was like, I need to get my butt into gear.
You're messing around with motorcycles and skydiving.
Yeah, I was.
Then
chasing
here I
a
am
lot
just
of-
punching in spreadsheets. So
You did the right way though.
to be fair, though, it was a little bit more the lame way.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I chased a lot of dopamine, and for better for worse, I was going for the big experiences. But then, I decided to buy, and I bought myself a single family house that converted to an ADU, additional dwelling unit.
Yeah, and that was the first time I had heard that acronym or even that idea of splitting a house. And even, again, it seems so super simple to just, we're going to add another unit, but I never really thought much about it. I always thought of the purpose-made duplexes.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't think it could be done, just I never really thought much about it.
Exactly, because it's not very common. And actually, at the time, Windsor was the first city in Ontario to actually start giving permits for additional dwelling units, I believe. Sorry. Doing it via electronic cloud permit. Sorry, they weren't the first backyard dwelling or granny suite. I don't think they were, but to do it online. They were one of the first. And so I kind of caught on that wave as it was starting to pick up. And because I wanted to do some hardcore house hacking, not just have a roommate, but actually build my own duplex essentially.
Yeah.
Because then you know the permit process, you know how the city works, how inspectors operate, you know how you start dealing with the trades, deal with the architect, and potentially like general contractors as well, like your GC. But I really wanted to know the ins and outs of the process, because then that way I'd be more dangerous in future deals, and I wouldn't be able to get jerked around
Yeah.
by people trying to take advantage of you, because that happens too, right?
Oh, certainly.
But that was my way of almost paying for my own education. So I figured even if I make mistakes, at least I'll fail forwards and I'll learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, then you have a duplex after it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how much are you really paying? If again, same sort of deal where maybe you end up paying more upfront if you mess up a project, or if somebody starts without knowing on their first deal and they pay for their education. It's like, oh, well, you just sit in that and then soak in the 4 incomes,
Yep.
and then you're made whole sooner than you'd think.
Mm-hmm. It's better to make mistakes and actually at least do something than it is just to sit on the sidelines and not do anything at all. Because the reason why people are successful, or like high achievers, at least this is from what I've noticed, not that I'm quite there yet, but it's they just act much quicker. They have speed on their side. So even though they might have 2-3 failures, they've tried 10 things. Meanwhile, you've only tried 2. So they're still net positive
Right.
towards that journey of growing or to getting to that destination of where they want to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I know I always do this, try to describe a visual. That Sam always tells me I do it too much. But there's one comic I saw where the guy's just bashing his head against a wall and it's like, that'll never work. Then he just keeps hitting it even harder and harder. Like, oh no, he's getting through.
Yeah. Because you just repeatedly, you keep doing the same things in day in, day out.
If you're not getting results, just smash your head harder. And then usually it works. And eventually you'll get better at smashing your head and you won't have to hit it as hard.
Yeah. Or you'll develop some calluses too. You can withstand the stress. You understand.
Yeah.
You're not as naive, and so you can operate and handle what's thrown at you, like the issues, because there's always going to be issues in real estate. It's all about figuring out problems and solving them.
Right.
And
that's why I go back to saying a lot of people have a problem for every solution. Oh man, I hate being in those conversations. I absolutely hate it. I'm always sitting there just like, it's, especially if it's like somebody I know. I think, okay, we don't have to talk about it. It's fine. We don't. I'm not forcing this. I'm like, oh, but there's this problem. I know. It's okay. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, okay, that's fine. We don't have to do it.
you just smile and wave.
I've run into that conversation a few times, and it's like, oh man.
Yeah.
So it's just that's completely a mindset thing. So
I'd say that's something that happens a lot with people who start getting real estate as well. You'll have family and friends who they mean well for the most part, I'd say.
Yeah, but it comes from a place of care. Yeah,
but they question it. And they have a lot of concern, and they are negative about everything. And they say, why are you doing it this way? Or maybe what could go wrong? So you almost gotta do it on your own for a bit before they start to believe in you.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, that is one thing I want to mention.
Be aware that people won't necessarily jump on board, because I don't know what it is about Canadians specifically too, but they just sometimes they don't want to see you succeed as much. Not saying family wants to hate on you, but I think it's just in general society, it doesn't really like it's.
I'll have to digest that one.
It's kind of like tall poppy syndrome, right? It's like, why is this person so successful? And like, what did they do to deserve that? Like, meanwhile, in like, let's say in the States capitalism, they're like, oh, good for that guy. I want to be like him. Or like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. You know what? I've seen a bit of that. I have.
Yeah. But maybe that's a little side tangent from the family and the parents kind of thing. But yeah, I'd say you have to keep that in mind, that they usually say it from a place of love, and you just got to say, well, they're only trying to look out for me, but I'm still going to do it my way.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And I've heard that from so many people. So if you are going to get started in real estate, you're going to have for at least 2 to 3 years until the checks start coming in regularly, until you pull up your Maserati. Just kidding. People will be disparaging, but not intentionally. It's just it just kind of comes out.
It takes a while for your family to come around, especially when you made mistakes like I have. And then it also casts some extra doubts. But slowly they do come around, and then people are like, oh wow, okay, so how do we get involved as a family, or what can we do to do this? People start to come to you as the expert, and we've started to see that now that we've done this basically 5 years.
Yeah, about that. Yeah. So we've at the point where at least we can prove we are certified non-idiots. I don't know about, I'm not going to necessarily say smart or genius yet. We'll give that another few decades, but we're certified non-idiots. That's why I like to say the engineering degree proves as well.
Yeah.
It just proves you're not an idiot. It
It's a
doesn't
nice
say much.
prerequisite to kind of at least get a foot in the door.
Yep. Doesn't say you're smart, but at least you're not dumb.
Oh man, I'd say too that one thing when back to my story, kind of when I started, because people were kind of doubting and asking questions. Once it was completed, they definitely turned around, but I wouldn't be able to do some of this stuff without, again, some of my power team. So not only did we have a realtor who's who's good, right, but we had a good lawyer, and we also had good contractors.
Oh,
And that's
man.
huge for your power team. I tried to do a lot of the work myself for the first unit. We're actually in the upper unit right now.
Yep.
So we gutted this to the studs, and I think you helped me a little bit. I
dude.
think you definitely did help me a little bit.
I remember stepping in and out of this wall here, getting a bunch of plaster in my eyes.
Yeah, full demo straight to the studs.
Yeah.
Electrical, insulation because there was none.
Yeah, there was
all
nothing.
all this stuff, reinforcing some beams.
Yeah.
But anyways, we had good contractors for the basement portion because I realized I can't be the only person swinging the hammer because one, you're not going to go fast. It's going to take a long time. And also, contractors not only can speed up the process, but they can probably do it better than I can.
Yeah.
And time is money. So the longer that I had these two units not being rented or lived in, the longer it was costing me rent of my own in rental and costing me mortgage payments. So I said, well, guess what? I had to start hiring out to people. So I had to find good contractors, and I did. I found some amazing people. And I think that's one thing people need to realize when they're starting out. They need to get some good references and get multiple quotes.
Yeah, because you've always been usually the one finding contractors. So have you really gone about that? Are you just talking to people, asking realtors?
Yeah, so you can ask realtors, ask other contractors for referrals. Like, hey, I know you're a framer, but who do you recommend for plumbing? Because usually the framers, the plumbers, electricians, they all work together at some point.
They
for
see each other,
and they sometimes they step on each other's toes too, right? But you can ask anyone for references, and then it's what you do from there that counts. You got to actually go talk to the contractor, see their previous work, or somehow get a feel for what they've done in the past. Maybe you creep their Instagram page if they have, or their website, or you talk to them too and say, hey, hypothetically, like, how much would this cost? Or what would you do in this situation if the project goes over budget, or the timeline gets shifted? How are we going to get back on track? Like, you listen to their answers, and then you take their answers and then talk to another contractor and compare those answers.
Right.
So you almost have them
that could
battle
even
with each
inform
other.
your questions.
Exactly.
Or, okay, yeah, that's cool. You could use those answers to lead them to saying, okay, yeah.
And then you compare them and say, okay, who's better? Who's more on the ball? And maybe, to be honest, too, sometimes it's just who's more cost effective at this point in time for the product I'm doing. Because sometimes contractors specialize in different things. Yeah. Or maybe this contractor's good for rental units, and this one's good for just like quick in and out flips and stuff. So I say, just go around, ask for references. And I find in the real estate community, investors themselves are really helpful for the most part. Right. Sometimes maybe they'll have their one guy who they love, who they don't want to share because that's their guy that's always being busy. Yeah.
You won't know that they have that guy.
Yeah. But for the most part, if you ask and you say, hey, do you know of anyone that does this, and people are more willing to help. So join the All Things REI Facebook group, plug right here. And then you can always ask for references there.
That's where I learned everything.
Yeah.
So, and then Wealth Genius helped. That was kind of the foundation, though, was just talking to people around Windsor. You know who you are. So, it was really helpful because at that point I knew nothing. And so it really helped. Yeah.
So just get involved and get connected with investors, and then that solves a lot of your problems. Is there anything else that we can think of if you're a newbie investor? And you want to get started and jump in that they should be aware of? And that's okay if we don't have anything. I'm just trying to think.
A couple things. Okay. Yeah. So on that, we're just talking about paying contractors, but I actually just had a conversation last week with somebody at work who was surprised to hear that I had paid somebody to do my drywalling. You're like, really? It made sense? You still made money? Well, yeah, it did. And so it's very common to do it yourself. I know a couple guys who did all their flips themselves. Anyway, yeah, there are a few people, and even one guy who built a duplex himself. So some people can do it, but if you have a day job, if you're working engineering job and you're gone 9 to 10 hours a day, your evenings are going to be miserable, and then you just have 4 months of your life gone. Or you pay somebody, and then your life is the same, and then your money actually ends up being about the same anyway, but you get 4 months back. So, yeah, I think it needs to be said out loud. It makes sense to pay contractors to do your personal projects. You don't have to, but it often makes sense financially and based on time.
Yeah, you got to free up your time. And maybe you can explain why you came to this realization, because you were in the thick of it one time.
Oh man, are you thinking of a particular scenario? I guess, yeah, because I
think
doing
the last one, which was your detached ADU.
Oh yeah, the detached ADU took way longer than I needed to because I was working evenings on it. So I had several people say, "Oh, you're still working on that?" Yeah. Yeah, and actually Tom was one of the people always bothering me. It's like, what are you doing? Putting up vapor barrier?
Yeah, it's just like all these tasks which are the lowest form of your useful time. You could have been making money other ways.
Yeah, so I was working from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Then I'd come in and I'd cook supper at 10 and then and then go to bed, get 7 hours of sleep. I like 8. I know, I spoil myself. But then I'd miss the gym because a lot of the time I would get 6, whatever it is. You know, it cascades from there. And I didn't even do all of it myself. I just did portions of it. And even then I looked at that and said, for a single unit, and it took me this long. Anyway, so
Yeah,
do the math.
goes
Sometimes
back
it
to
makes sense to
saying
pay people.
Speed is the name of the game.
Yeah. So that's one thing I've talked to people. That is a mindset difference. So this goes back to me saying it's a mindset of what you consider ordinary, and the actual item that we're talking about isn't complicated or special. It's just not considered within the realm of ordinary. So the other thing in that category, which maybe you could tell us about, would be the HELOC, the home equity line of credit.
Yeah, good point actually, because some people say, "Hey, how am I going to afford this?"
I just
Where
had
am I
an
gonna get the
accountant
money
yesterday say, "Sorry, HELOC." Like
accountant?
just the fact that even the acronym in my mind in our world, just that's the most beautiful acronym you're ever going to hear.
Yeah.
But then other people say, "Sorry, what now?" Even if they know what it is, it's not as common in
That's a great point, actually. That's
in everyday life.
Because people normally say, "Oh, pay down your mortgage right away and just pay off your house," and then they have all this money left in their house, and they just kind of forget about it until they sell.
Yeah.
But a HELOC is a home equity line of credit, so it's a loan that you take out against your home.
Right.
And this isn't a second mortgage. This is just saying, hey, if I have, let's say, we'll go back to the house that's $100,000. If I paid for this house and it's free and clear now, $100,000, I can withdraw 80% of that money. So I would have 80 grand to play with. And with that 80 grand, I only pay interest on what I use. So
Just like a normal line of credit.
Just like a normal line of credit,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would, let's say I take $10,000. Then I'm going to pay interest on that $10,000, but that interest payment is going to be much less than the unsecured lines of credit that you can get just from a random bank, because it's secured against a property, and the bank knows that you're living there, and they know that you have a lot of equity in the property. So God forbid you don't pay, the bank can always sell the property because it has all this equity in it.
It's secured. It's a secured loan.
It's a secured loan, yeah.
And I think the unsecured loans right around now, you're looking at something like 11, 12% for just a line of credit. Whereas a home equity line of credit, a secured loan, brings it down to half of that usually.
Yeah.
Something closer to 6 or even 5%, depending on where the interest rates are at.
Depending on your credit score, I think maybe affects it slightly too. But overall, yeah, it's way, way better.
Yeah.
And so what people can do then is they can either buy a property with their HELOC if they have enough, or they can at least use it for renovations. And it's almost like a revolving credit card they can use.
Yeah. And it's cheap money compared to other options.
Yeah. And so obviously you want to make sure you have a way to pay it back, but
well, if you're spending it on real estate, you're spending it, you should be spending it on an income generating asset. You're not spending it on a lifetime supply of Skittles or a daily Taco Bell visits.
Of course. Yeah.
So-
yeah. I guess I should preface saying you don't want to spend it on a bad property. So make
Yeah.
sure you know your numbers before you deploy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're going to borrow against your own house, you should probably be spending the money on something useful.
Right.
And the whole idea is, well, doesn't that cost money when you borrow money? Well, yeah, but when you spend money correctly, it makes you money.
Because you can be making, let's say your interest, we're just, again, even numbers, interest on a HELOC was 5%.
Yeah.
But you know that by buying this flip or by buying this property and you renovating it, it's going to increase the value by 50K. Wow, that 50K will definitely pay your interest payments for the whatever 6 months that it took for you to do this project, and then you'll make money on top of it. So you're really putting your money to work for you, because if it sits in the property all that time, it's really not doing anything. It's just accumulating. It's just appreciating. The house is appreciating, but the money is just stuck in it.
Yeah. It's it's a way to realize unrealized gains without having to sell.
Yeah.
And so not exactly the same, but it functions in a similar way, lets you tap into your increase.
Yeah.
So
I would say similar to the HELOC, people can use their RRSPs to invest as well.
ooh, that's exciting, because that is still a topic that I need to look into, because I want to do that. Even though, I mean, like, whatever, I'm in my 20s, what's my RRSP looking like?
Or you
but
can
but
always,
still,
you can use it and you can fund other people's deals. You can't use
Yeah.
it to fund your own, but basically what you can do is with your RRSPs, you can make tax-free gains and use your RRSP as a secured mortgage on someone's project. So you could joint venture and you could say, hey,
it's secured. It's a secured mortgage?
oh yeah, this isn't going to be, you're not going to just private lend with your RRSP.
Right.
You're going to have to secure this as a second position
Oh,
mortgage
that's what you mean. Yes.
on,
Okay.
on a property.
Okay.
So let's say I was buying a property, I have some funds, then you would come in for the construction loan, let's say, and make a second position mortgage on my project. So that way your RSPs are at least safer. So again, if the project went wrong, you could always sell the property and you would be second in line to get your money back.
Right. So
But-
the bank or whoever would be first position, they're the
bank.
first one paid out. And if there's
Yeah.
anything left over, you pay off second position. Okay. And so if the property really tanks in value and there's not enough left over, the second position gets paid out with what's left.
Yep.
So, okay. So you just need to do your due diligence and pick a property that's not going to tank in value.
Or yeah, pick the right investor as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one caveat is you can't just go to your CIBC or TD and say, hey, I want to use my RSPs in this. You have
Right.
to use a third party, accredited third party, to essentially access your funds and lend it out on your behalf. One of them is called Olympia Trust.
Oh, yeah.
And so their whole shtick is that they'll use your funds. I believe there's a small fee to be able to do all these transacting, but they're one of only a handful of companies that actually allow you to use your RSPs.
Yeah, it doesn't
And-
seem common. The fact that I've never heard it talked about outside of maybe 3 people.
Well, there's a reason, right?
Yeah.
And it's because the banks don't want you to know, because they want to use your money instead.
The banks don't want you to know this one simple trick.
Yeah. That's true, though.
Yeah,
Right?
seriously.
It's... And they would also probably advise and say, no, that's too risky. You should take this 2% market link GIC
Yeah.
or this crappy
about-
mutual fund where we
how about
actually
no?
Yeah. Because that's what the banks do, and they're using your money
Yeah.
and investing it on your without doing anything.
And they
maybe
also
three
have
times over.
They also have fractional reserve lending and all that other criminal stuff. So I mean, like, whatever.
Exactly. So
Google it. Fractional reserve lending. We'll leave it at that because I don't know what I'm talking about.
but be the master of your own money. And that's the moral of the story. And you can do that
Yeah.
with HELOCs or RSPs, or if you have to, try saving up or partnering with someone in order to buy your next property. I would be careful about who you partner with for sure.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that in a future episode about partnerships. But I would say if you're wondering, oh man, I don't have a lot of money to start out with, you can maybe partner with someone who has money and you have all the time in the world, and you can do the renovations for them.
Yeah, do the active.
And you can be more the active partner, right? And you can almost learn that way from a seasoned investor who has all the money. Or maybe if you can't buy a property, maybe you start to wholesale a little bit, doing wholesaling. That's another avenue. We don't have time really to get into that too much, but wholesaling is essentially where you go find off-market properties and you say, hey seller, I'm going to buy your property from you for X amount of dollars, for $100,000. But then you go around and I take this contract and say to the other investor, I'm going to sell it to you for 110, and then you make that $10,000 spread.
Yeah.
So that's wholesaling. So that's a way to kind of build up your capital in order to get into the market. If you're trying to get into real estate.
Yeah, that one's really interesting.
Yeah, there's many.
I've never done a wholesale, but that one's really interesting.
I've done two, and
Yeah.
when I do it some more, probably not because it's a lot of work. I'll just buy from the wholesalers in the future. But do you have any other ones that to cover? Because you said there's a couple.
That was
you want to talk
I think
about the HELOC was the main one.
I think
right?
the HELOC was the main one, and then just simply paying contractors. Those are the two things. Because I'm just trying to think of the things that I didn't consider within the realm of normal.
Right.
And I've been reminded recently by a few conversations of what other things people just kind of raise an eyebrow at and say, "Oh, really? You actually do that?"
Yeah.
Oh, one other thing I'll say. One of the objections I've heard recently, not even an objection, just somebody bringing up, but isn't that bad? Like the fact that Ontario has tenant-friendly laws. Ontario, and when you talk to American investors, oh my goodness, I've talked to a few who are just flabbergasted by Ontario's laws, and they just said, we will never touch Canada with a 39.5-foot pole. And we're sitting here in Windsor saying, it's okay. It's not so bad. Just because we're used to it.
Yeah.
But even having I had my first L1 hearing a couple weeks ago.
Board.
So the L1 is the eviction application. So it doesn't necessarily always lead to an eviction. Sometimes it leads to a payment plan in this case. But now that I've seen more of the process, it works. It's slower. So you're not naked and unprotected. It may be less efficient than we would like, and maybe the outcomes aren't always as favorable as the landlord would like. But from what I saw, the adjudicator and how they talk, the way they consider everything, and even just reading through all the forms you have, the way they work, even if you don't like the process, it still exists. So you're not going in naked. Because I know some people, they feel like they're entirely unprotected and just completely exposing themselves to the slings and arrows of the rental market. It's like, sure, there's risk. And it goes back to the first part of the conversation but there's a process. So it's not as scary as you think is all I'm getting at. So that's one of the next biggest things for somebody getting into it. If they're scared of that, and if they are scared of that, guess what? You can hire a management company to do all of that for you. You lose some income, but you don't have to worry about anything.
It's the who. Like we were saying earlier, it's who. Who can you do or who can you hire or put in places to take the tasks they don't like or that you're not good at or don't know what the heck you're doing.
Yep. And then you pay attention each time and see, can I or should I take on that role myself? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's no. And then you settle into a groove. And then you get to a point where you say, maybe I don't need to change things up because things are kind of working for me. And you do what you like. And then you keep that moving.
Keep it moving. Just got to take action, right?
Yeah. You just keep moving. So
I think that's about a wrap for this episode, man. We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. That's a lot of the basics. A lot of the first things that you got to think about when you're jumping in.
Mm-hmm. And if there's anything else that you think about that you might have questions about, reach out to us. We're happy to hop on a call or explain or point you in the right direction of resources that you might want to learn from. And come out to our real estate meetup that's happening end of this month, February 27th. It's going to be a really interesting one. Downtown Windsor, we're seeing conversion project.
I'm excited for that one.
Office space being converted to residential units. Four residential and it's still one commercial by a seasoned investor, Ray Blanchard. He's the Bitcoin building guy. And we're seeing his next project. It's going to be pretty wild.
That was exciting. Yeah.
So this might be maybe one of those strategies that's definitely for someone who's a bit more seasoned. But hey, even if you're a newbie investor or seasoned, it doesn't matter.
It shows you what's possible. That's
shows
really
what's possible.
You show up and you see, oh, people are doing this. Neat. Mm-hmm. And you say, wow, maybe if I can just on my weekends do 1/10 of that, and oh my goodness, I'm actually making money off of this.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So it's just shows you what's possible and just expands what you consider normal. Mm-hmm. So it's doable.
Yeah. So come out to that, guys, and then stay tuned for the next episode where we hopefully by then we'll have an actual name.
We'll figure it out
for this podcast. Yeah, we'll figure it out. All right. Take care, everyone.
All right,
See you next time.